First of all, we understand that there's already a joint cooperation possible for the investigation about this fraud case between the mainland and Taiwan. Ms. Lei, let's just be frank. What kind of challenges do you perceive in the investigation likely to take place?
Well, certainly in the first instance, there was public outcry in terms of these 45 people being extradited to mainland China. And I think that is not because Taiwanese do not consider fraud to be a heinous crime, but because most of the Taiwanese were misled by misinformation. The initial information stated that those people were acquitted by the Kenya court, and then they were sent to China simply by sovereignty considerations, which both of whom were erroneous. Later on, we found out the truth that the Kenya only tried them for misuse of telecom information, equipment, and also they were sent to China primarily because most of the victims were in mainland China. So that addresses your question. In terms of Taiwanese government rules and law enforcement officers, because the crime did not happen in Taiwan and the victims were not in Taiwan, there were only limited assistance that Taiwan could support mainland China's investigation. On the other hand, mainland China has both the evidence and the alleged criminals as well as the victims. So in these particular cases, the 45 Taiwanese involved in the Kenya ring, I think Taiwan does have a support role. The supporting role is to support the families for visitation or to provide legal assistance to allow these people have full legal defense. Other than that, in terms of investigation or criminal prosecution, there were little Taiwanese authorities could do on the island.
I see. Let's go to you, Mr. Zhong. What do you make of this supporting role Ms. Lei from Taipei just outlined coming from the Taiwan side? Is that what the mainland police and the relevant departments of investigation would like to see?
Yes, of course. The Chinese mainland officials indeed sincerely wish the Taiwan side could provide some supporting, especially could provide some basic information of those suspects and provide some evidence of those suspects. I hope the two sides could cooperate smoothly in future. However, there are still lots of challenges. The most challenge now is I hope these cases would not be politicalized. Otherwise, the cooperation maybe would be stopped. And in future, the biggest challenge is that whether Tsai Ing-wen, after her taking her position, taking her office in May 20, whether she could accept 1992 consensus. If she refused to accept 1992 consensus, maybe the dialogue between the two sides will be stopped. Then the cooperation between those legal departments will be stopped. That will be the greatest challenge for the two sides, I think.
Right. Well, of course, this case comes at a very critical time, I have to say. Ms. Lei, at ordinary days, this is not much of a problem. But now, when the May the 20th is approaching, when the new government in Taiwan is likely to come into the office and possibly make clear as to what's their stance toward the mainland, that is really the sensitive issue here. What do you make, Ms. Lei, given your political knowledge of the island and your, shall I say, very experienced personal interactions with even Ms. Tsai Ing-wen herself, making of the fact that she has not spoken at all on this case? Is it are you pro toward this practice or against this practice? What kind of signal is sending?
Well, I do believe that Ms. Tsai Ing-wen has worked behind the scene, because if you watch carefully, in the first instance, both DPP and New Power, those two new parties which are in the pan-green camp, actually launched an all-out campaign against the Ma Ying-jeou government, saying that they should rescue those Taiwanese back into Taiwan and making it into a huge human rights issue and sovereignty issue. But later on, when the facts were gradually cleared, that is, they were charged with heinous crime of telecom fraud and there were serious evidence against them, then all the DPP legislators, as well as New Power, have changed their tone. All of a sudden, they stopped criticizing the government for not rescuing them, but started to criticize the Minister of Justice in terms of her personal stance. I think the sudden change of direction probably came from Ms. Tsai Ing-wen to tell them, hush, hush, this is not the right thing to say. However, I fully agree with your studio guest that is, Tsai Ing-wen has to make clear in terms of whether her stance on the 92 consensus is conducive to cooperation of cross-straits going forward, as mainland China have repeatedly asked her to make that stance clear.
Mr. Zhong, this is really, as I said, the most sensitive time that something like this comes up. Of course, people of different political consensus would take advantage of this opportunity and advance their own cause. That's no problem, and that's no doubt. But having said that, though, how much do you think the ways that the Taiwan side is handling this issue would indicate or hint to the mainland and even the rest of the world as to what kinds of likely position and attitude they're likely to take on May the 20th? And what do you make of this kind of judicial cooperation, which of course has been an agreement reached by the year 2009 by the two sides across the Taiwan Straits, could mean for the overall consensus between these two sides?
Yes, the biggest change, the biggest challenge for Taiwan side is maybe the public opinion in Chinese mainland. In the past, the Chinese mainland, the common people believe Taiwan, the most beautiful thing in Taiwan is Taiwanese, is people. But for this case, maybe in future, at least some people in Chinese mainland believe that Taiwan is nothing but the haven of fraud.
At least this kind of perception.
Exactly. So maybe the image of Taiwan would be changed for Chinese mainland. And if Taiwan side could not punish those suspects properly, then its image will be changed for the entire world. And another side is that the Taiwan side, Taiwan is enjoying visa-free program for more than 140 countries and regions. And if Taiwan could not deal with these suspects properly, then maybe those countries will stop those kind of visa program for Taiwan.
Well, you didn't answer my question directly. I see you are more talking about Taiwan's image for the future when others see Taiwan, whether from mainland or the rest of the world. But I would like to continue by repeating my question again as to how do you think the Taiwan political parties, particularly now the DPP at this moment, its way of handling this issue at the moment could indicate to the mainland about Taiwan's possible stance when the new government comes in toward cross-strait relations?
The new government, the Tsai Ing-wen government, of course, is willing to continue this kind of cooperation between the two sides. And for the Chinese mainland, it will continue willing to conduct this kind of cooperation between the two sides for the benefits of Taiwan compatriots and also to protect the benefits of the victims in Chinese mainland.
I see. Well, let me go to you before we wrap up, Ms. Lei. There are several issues here. One is judicial issue. The other is the internal debates and public opinion issue across the Taiwan Straits on both sides toward this fraud case about each other. And thirdly, of course, there is the issue of how each other is likely to treat one another after May the 20th. This has a lot to do with what Tsai Ing-wen and the new government has in mind and will announce about its cross-strait relations policy. What do you think, all of these elements combined, can we find a solution to this specific case? What do you make of the near future cross-straits?
Let me take your second question to start. Please note that most of the people in Taiwan do consider telecom fraud a very heinous crime. And that is a general consensus. And the outcry to save those people thinking they were victims were very quickly turned into outcries for DPP not to erroneously protect people who might be subject to wrongdoings. So in that sense, I fully agree that Taiwan has to deal with this issue internally, and that public outcry and the consideration has already happened.
Right.
So DPP will have to yield to the public opinion and started to revisit their position and stating that they have to deal with this. That having said, cross-strait joint agreement to combat crime has benefited Taiwan tremendously. It allowed us to repatriate, extradite criminals from mainland China back to Taiwan for legal prosecution. So in the future, when Tsai Ing-wen take on her leadership role and take on a pragmatic view, she would realize that this is actually not only mutually beneficial, but actually benefit Taiwan more than it benefits mainland China.
Right.
So it is to her advantage and to the best interest of the people for her to preserve the goodwill and joint cooperation.
All right. Lei Chen, or Joanna Lei as known, and also Zhong Houtao with us. Thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate both of your perspectives. Thank you.